Hi, it's Kathy. I wanted to just talk about today's interview with Melissa Swonger. When I met her, I knew right away she was someone I wanted to have this conversation with, and you're about to hear why. Not long ago, she was hit with what she calls her trapdoor moment, the kind that drops you to your knees and makes you question everything. She had every reason to give up, but instead, she listened to her soul, and that one decision changed her entire life. In less than 5 months, Melissa went from pain and uncertainty to purpose and impact. She wrote a book, launched a nonprofit all around radical kindness, and stepped onto stages that she never imagined that she'd be on. She's the perfect example of what it means to unlearn the crap that keeps us stuck and level up into who we were meant to be. If you've ever been in that space where you're holding on by a thread and wondering how to take the next step, this episode is your reminder that that one step, guided by your soul, can and will rewrite your story.
Welcome to Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Unlearn the Crap TV is more than just a show. It's a movement towards breaking free from the disempowering structures designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many. It's about education, healing, and unlearning the detrimental beliefs that have been ingrained in society for generations. So now, please welcome the host of Unlearn the Crap TV, Kathy Baldwin.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up. Your soul is calling. I'm your host, Kathy Baldwin. For those of you who are new to our podcast, let me quickly explain what I mean when I say Unlearn the Crap. CRAP is an acronym. It stands for Conditioned Responses and Automatic Programming. It is our thoughts, feelings, and our beliefs. It is what turns the emotional, the energetic into the physical manifestations of our life. Because we are interconnected, interrelated beings, everything we say, do, feel, think matters. And it affects every area of our lives. Today, I have Melissa Swonger joining us, and we are going to be talking about all of that and so much more. But before we go into the juicy stuff, Melissa, could you please tell our audience what crap you needed to unlearn so that you could level up?
The crap that I learned was that the world is unsafe. So people with a trauma brain, people with CPTSD or PTSD have learned that the world is an unsafe place. And we look to prove ourselves. Like whatever you focus on, you're going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so we have plenty of evidence to show us that the world is unsafe. And so it's learning to not only see trust and safety in situations that are just normal daily situations and normal daily connections, but also learning to trust ourselves again after choosing to be a part of environments that have been unsafe. And it's very timely because recently I fell through a trapdoor, and that's not figuratively, that's literally. And I had this time, it's actually a storm shelter. I'd had a really rough year last year with my niece's youngest being diagnosed with a terminal illness and wasn't going to live to see his third birthday. So I had put my life on pause here to move in with her family temporarily. And we'd gone through that. I stayed 6 weeks after he passed. And before I could even get in the house, the psychologist within me thought I had done a great job on the 4.5-hour drive back home, and really just making great plans to merge back into life after this specific trauma. And before I could even get in the house, I took one step on the storm shelter door, which opened, and I fell down because it wasn't locked. It's never been unlocked while I've lived there, but in this moment had been unlocked and not relocked. And so one step My left leg went this way. I went down, laying there flat on my back. I broke my back in 2 places, tore a avulsion fracture in my pelvis, and tore the hamstrings in what used to be my good leg. And so I couldn't even use crutches initially because of my back. And so I had a lot of time to lay there and think about the arc of my life to this moment and all that I'd gone through. And what did the Lord want me to do with this moment right now? Because you see, it wasn't my first freak accident. It was my second. So in 2009, I'd had a shopping cart sever the back of my leg through my Achilles, stopping in my ankle bone. And through 10 months of surgeries and that didn't take, skin grafts that didn't take, they wanted to amputate my leg. They said, you'll never walk again without assistance. We didn't amputate my leg. I was in a wheelchair on and off for 4 years or on crutches or with a cane. And I did ultimately learn how to walk again without assistance. Not only walk, but run 5Ks, 10Ks in Summit Mountains. But here I was in this space again. And what I heard then, and I didn't do, was write your story. What I heard now was write your story. And so with nowhere else to go, as soon as I could sit up, I began writing Whom He Raised, which comes out in February. And so that was the story, Whom He Raised, is the arc of my life. And I have CPTSD from all of the epigenetic trauma, the medical trauma, the abuse and dysfunction and narcissistic parenting that I'd gone through. And I'm the youngest of 6. And so I had a front row seat to 105 ways not to do life. But I'd never seen one way to do it right. So I have a lot of ups and downs. My timeline looks like an erratic EKG. But when I was 25 and had my oldest daughter, I held her, and for the first time in my life, I loved something more than myself, something bigger than me. And I just prayed to God for wisdom in James 1:5 fashion. Let any who ask wisdom, and He'll give it to you generously without condemnation. Because I knew if something didn't change, I was going to screw this up. And I was going to repeat the trauma cycle. And God gave me that wisdom largely through a woman named Laura Casper. She was a mentor who became like a mama to me, became a grandma to my kids, and helped me reparent my inner child. And so I wish it was linear, but it's not. And there was a lot of mess wrapped up in that. And I had a lot of wrong thinkings and wrong patterns. You know, my brain, we're wired for connection. We're born needing connection. But trauma had rewired my brain for protection. And so I was hypervigilant. I was reluctant to make authentic connections. I didn't show up as my true self because people said, you know, just be yourself. Well, I was either too much or not enough in alternating measures. So the axiom of just being yourself was completely lost on me. I didn't even know who I was. And so my journey is one of unlearning the trauma responses and learning who I am, connecting vertically, inwardly, and then outwardly.
Yeah. Okay, we have a lot of unpacking in that story. But before we go into that, could you please tell our audience who you are and how you serve the world now that you've unlearned that crap, that the world isn't safe?
Yeah. So I have been the CEO of Sage Hill Consulting for a bit, and we are agents of change who focus on individual and organizational change through leadership and transformation coaching. But I'm also the founder of the Sage Hill Project. Now that I've written that book, we're launching a movement through the Sage Hill Project that's mobilizing radical kindness, because I found that to be the catalyst, right? It's the spark that lights the flame. That's the catalyst to transformation.
That is exactly why I have been excited about this conversation with you. But before we get into all of that radical kindness, it just blows my mind. Can we go back to your story? Because when you first started talking, you shared a whole lot with us that it was like, whoa, okay, wait a minute.
There's a lot of layers there, aren't there?
Yeah, where do you want to start? Do you want to start when you woke up in the bed and finally got the message? Because for me, Unlearn the Crap, it was little whispers. And I ignored the whisper. It was kind of like a fly on my shoulder. Get off, go away, because I was so focused in on the shoulds and the conditioned responses of what was expected of me that it took me a 2x4. It took me down for me to listen to the calling and hear you're going the wrong direction. Turn around.
Yeah, sometimes it's a whisper and sometimes it's a 2x4. For me,
I think falling through a trapdoor is equivalent to a 2x4.
yeah, or something bigger. What's bigger than a trapdoor? Yeah, because in the movies you think you fall through the trapdoor and they just spring back up, tuck and roll, and go into the next action scene. But in reality, I have found that to be a metaphor for several times in my life. And speaking to others about it, even in my coaching spaces, is what is the metaphor for the trapdoor in your life? Right? What are the moments where the ground gives way and everything you thought was steady takes your breath away and you just lay there in the grave, more dead than alive? And that's one of the things actually in those first 2 weeks that I wrote out was, what are the ways I'm more dead than alive right now? Not physically. I didn't mean from the accident. I mean becoming aware. So the first step in transformation is awareness. So it was really, I had nothing but time to take the inventory of what's working in this season and becoming aware, because I'd done a lot of healing. I mean, I was in the process of creating space for other people to heal. So I'd been in a soul healing journey for a very long time and had some great success with it. But in this moment, I really became aware again, anew, because I don't think we ever stop asking ourselves to be aware. And if you have a Christian faith, that would be like Psalm 139, search my heart and point out any offensive ways, because there's things that are no longer serving us. And I think mercifully, we don't deal with it all at once.
No.
And so laying there, I can't say that it was a realization that I should write. It was a realization of my disobedience to not write. And why hadn't I written it yet? Because I knew I had a gift of writing. I always have. Like, I was a kid who wrote in journals and wrote songs and poems and cards. Like I've always loved it as a healing process and just as part of my gifting. It's my way to create because I have zero artistic talent other places. But in 2009, 2010, the first accident, I knew that I was being told to write my story and I didn't want to be vulnerable. Like, it's just so vulnerable to write the arc of your story. And I wanted it to have meaning and purpose. And I don't know that it was fully developed at that time. And when I went back to seminary in 2017, I had a wonderful advisor, Dr. Rodney Cooper, and I went to interdenominational seminary. So there's a lot of wrestling in those spaces and I loved it. And we had to tell the arc of our story there, our timeline. And I was like, how much are we supposed to share in class? And he was like, what do you mean? And so I went and told him first. And he said, yours is a story that has to be told. So that's confirmation. In 2017, I did not write my story. And I had written a fiction book under a pseudonym that I did not publish because I was like, maybe this will satisfy that urge, right? It didn't, because the point was to write my story. And then laying in this bed, it's not that I thought if I don't do it, lightning's going to strike 3 times with another freak accident. I wasn't thinking that along those lines. But
but it probably would have.
Yeah, it probably would have. I mean, that's fair. But I knew that my story might help someone because my transformation journey changed a legacy. I'm an agent of change. I changed a legacy. And overcoming the fear of being vulnerable was worth it to put the journey out there.
Yeah. I absolutely honor what you are saying, because I believe that at this time in our lives, so many of us are feeling this calling, or we're having these major catastrophes happen in our lives. And it is all about us doing that vulnerable healing work that puts the line in the sand and says the past ends here.
Yeah.
I clean up ancestral trauma,
Yeah.
all of that pain, that epigenetics that you were talking about, all of that needs to stop going into the next generations. And so, like you and me, and so many of us who are listening, it is the scary work of going deep. What did you have to come to terms with? What was the main arc of your story that was needed to be told for you cathartically, but for the world to hear?
Yeah. Well, I have a story that has so many because, I have CPTSD. So mine wasn't one or two events. Mine was a lifestyle of trauma. And the decisions I made out of having not overcome that trauma. And the real go ahead.
Sorry, can you articulate what that means? Because so many times people think that trauma are these big events,
Yeah.
the earthquakes or the physical abuse or the sexual attacks or whatever. But
Yeah.
what you just talked about is so much a part of so many people's stories. And I don't think they really understand the ramifications.
Yeah. Yes. So because everything you mentioned is traumatic. So those are traumas. CPTSD is basically a lifestyle of trauma. And what that means is our brain becomes hardwired because of the constant or chronic stress we're under because of the environment where it's prolonged. And one of the things I say in my book is that, in one chapter, I said, if you have mental whiplash at this point, I get it, because if it was bad all the time, we get it. You could write it off. You almost understand, but it's the whiplash that actually trains our brain for hypervigilance, where it can be good, and then you're looking for the moments and the shifts, the shift in tone, the shift in demeanor, the air that shifts around you where something's about to happen, and that primes you for a constant state of fight or flight.
Yeah.
And you carry that everywhere you go because you never know when the other shoe is going to fall. You could have a period of peace, but you can't even enjoy that peace because all you're worried about is insulating yourself from the next time. And then there's no debriefing, right? There's no, maybe you have a therapist, but I didn't. There's no debriefing. There's no guide, especially if it's the adults in your life that are creating this and you're under their power. Then you go on to the next moment without any sort of healing. I always call it, in the book, I call it the quiet after the storm, where no one's sure what to do. It's like, did that really happen? And then you start to gaslight yourself in addition to the gaslighting they're doing for you. You're like, well, did that really happen like that?
Or am I making too big of a deal out of it? Because we normalize.
Yes, we normalize the trauma in order to reduce the cognitive dissonance. So if you're an unempowered, and children are the most unempowered demographic that exists, if you are unempowered and you're in your core development stages or personality formation stages, and this is a part of your life, then your brain is literally rewired. And the idea of normal connections doesn't even compute. So typicals, we have a divergent brain now, and then the typicals go on about their lives like just engaging in ways that we feel we don't even have a rule book for. Like we're always feel like we're on the outside looking in because we're not operating under the same manual. So it's like, what are the rules of the game? I don't know. And they're thinking, what game? Like nobody understands the conversation, because our brains are processing in very different manners. So there's mind, body, spirit integration, right? Because we're fragmented. And no matter what your faith journey is, even secular psychology, which is my PhD, full disclosure, I'm a seminary grad for master's. So I love to pull all of it together because a lot of people are coming for trauma for spiritual healing and soul healing and therapy, who have church wounds and faith wounds. And so we're not excluding anyone from this journey. But my faith is an integral part of my own healing. But wherever you are, come wherever you are and bring all the mess. And the only way we can do it is by creating a safe space where wherever you are, whatever's happened, however your brain's thinking, it's okay. It's neutral. Data is neutral until we assign feelings to it.
Okay, stop right there. That is critical. I want you to hone in on that, because you are right. When we can disconnect from the emotional part of what the story means, and we just look at it as data.
Yeah.
And we accept that it happened, like a timeline of history, no emotional attachment. Now we can choose what to take from it. Is that how you?
A little bit. I want to be careful to say that we can take that concept too far and dissociate in a way that's not healthy. But zooming out and taking a 30,000 foot view is important.
Can you give us an example of how you did that?
Yeah, I will. So the 3 steps that I kind of break transformation down into are awareness, connection, and movement. And so we already talked about the awareness aspect. And so each transition between the segments kind of has an overlap, like a Venn diagram. And so the second part of awareness leads us into connection. And so for me, the first way that we connect is that vertical connection. And for me and those who are in a faith place, that would be a connection with God, right? That includes zooming out and understanding that we're connecting to a higher power, something bigger than ourselves. If you're in a place where that seems foreign to you or far from you, then you would take a 30,000 foot view of your own self as an observer and be writing down what you think. You can invite other people that are close to you to weigh in, but I would never ask for someone's advice whose choices you wouldn't make. So you have to be really careful who you invite into that process. And it's a sacred process. If you have professional help, which I highly advocate, then I did. I've had different therapists at different times in my life, and coaches. I think there's having a guide is critical. It was for me, and mentors who become really close. Like the whole connecting part is important, and I was prone to isolation. So then when you start taking that inventory by connecting outside of yourself, you're better able to just look at it objectively and find out what's serving me, what's not serving me, because there's a lot that we're afraid to look at. If you're like me, and I know there's many people with CPTSD or PTSD who are, then we have worked to hide a lot of our life behind a closed door that we do not want to open. We have worked to lock it tight behind chains. And what's hidden in the dark grows to monstrous proportions. So the concept of bringing it to light can be paralyzing. And so we kind of look at the inside of us as like a house, or our body as a house or a garden. And I went through this process of where's the light and where's the dark, because the dark is usually what we're not wanting to shine the light on. And we can be healed in parts of us and still not realizing the outcomes we want because we're still keeping part of us in the dark. And so if I'm with someone, then I'm going to ask them, and we'll just do it one at a time, because when you look at the whole, it's overwhelming. So we just have to take one step, one area, one focus at a time.
Okay, so I still want to hear a concrete example of how you use this by disconnecting. But I'll lead. I believe in leading with vulnerability. When I was a young teenager, older men were very attracted to me. My age group, I was the nerd. I was the pariah. So that part of me who was trying to figure out who I am and where I fit found this attention very exciting and wrong. And I knew it was wrong, but yet I enjoyed it. And so many of us go through these situations where for years I carried guilt that I enjoyed this attention. There was no lines crossed, but I knew it was inappropriate, it was wrong. And so when I was going through my healing journey, I was able to look at the fact that the chaos that was going on in my home was finding something from this, and I used what I had. And so I was able to remove the guilt and the shame that I had enjoyed this attention. Is that the sort of thing that we're talking? Because that's what I was referring to when I was saying disconnect the story from the emotions.
Yes. And so, like in that instance, if you were feeling shame or something and looking at it from your adult point of view to this is a teenage, something that happened, it doesn't define me. I don't live under that shame, or identifying ways you had been even unconsciously living under that shame, then that would be what we would want to open the door into and shine the light on and saying, you don't have to carry that. That's not serving you. You can let that go and stay in the dark. And we shrink it back down to a manageable size and say, you were a child, right? So we had to live through things. Our inner children live through things. And so going to that inner child work and just your adult self, that's part of that 30,000 foot view, and going to whatever age you were at the time that's feeling that shame and just loving them and hugging them as thank you for getting me through that. I've got it here. Because we can let that inner child operate at different parts of our life as an adult, not holistically. There's a lot of people who have been through trauma who are workaholics because they learned their trade or whatever they're doing as an adult. And they learned it compartmentalized ways, so they can go to work and they can be high functioning, and when they get home, chaos erupts. They're a different person, and their family's thinking, why is this person so different there? They get the best work, gets the best version of them, and then they're not at all like that here. And so then that person wants to be at work more. Well, you have some inner child wounds operating there that have never been healed, because when you get home and it's all social, those social skills were learned young. And so you have to go back in. It's usually in a marriage, it would be inner children fighting it out, right? And then who's raising the kids? Is it a 12-year-old version of you? Is it a 16-year-old version of you, right? And so that's part of the legacy change work that we have to do, is heal those inner child wounds so that we can evolve to be the parent our children need without reacting as a child.
Yes, in every area of our life.
Yes.
Is this what you were unpacking while you were laying in that bed?
Yeah, it's part. I mean, a lot of this I had done before, so I have the tools in my toolbox already. But part of taking an ongoing inventory, I was definitely trying to see what's serving me. I'll share, like you shared, I'll share really quick, and then I'll give another metaphor if it fits, that I find really helpful in this moment. But for me, so I come from a family of women, and in my family, my mom was the narcissist. She was the abuser. And I didn't want to forgive her. As a matter of fact, I would say I hate you as much as a child would say I love you by that time, because there was some serious abuse that she had enacted that made it seem reasonable from a worldly perspective to not. But unforgiveness is just bitterness. It just sows seeds of bitterness, and it doesn't serve me. It's like drinking poison myself, thinking it's going to hurt her. And it didn't. And she comes from a line of abuse. So she wasn't healed, right? So this is just the legacy of unhealed women. And I didn't want to perpetuate that. But the really turning point for me wasn't when I was lying in the bed this time, but when I was on my soul healing journey, and I was with my great guide, and she was asking, do you want to forgive your mom? No, not really. Why would I? And then she was like, well, what would it take to forgive your mom? I can't think of one thing. Like, no, I just don't want to. And then she said, well, would you like to ask God to help you forgive your mom? Well, if he wants to, he can. And that was the kicker, is that asking for that help when I was poisoning myself. And that, for me, clearing that unforgiveness for someone who's never going to be sorry. She's passed now, but I was even able to reconnect. I took some space and went on a significantly deep, from my family of origin, and took a significantly deep healing journey. And during that time, I took a big inventory of looking, you're not what happened to you. So what did happen to you? And I've written that down, a million times. And this book doesn't have all the gory details, because why include them? But it has a lot of emotional honesty about, here's some highlights, there's some specifics, and then the emotional honesty that I felt going from highlight to highlight and year by year as we cover the arc of my transformation. And I think the other metaphor I would apply to this, other than the light in the house, is there's a book, and I can't remember the author right now. I wish I could. I hope we find it before you air. But it's called Canoeing the Mountains, and it's actually a leadership book. But it is, because I've done a lot of focus on leadership. You have to learn to lead yourself and others well. But it is about Lewis and Clark as a metaphor, and they thought, you don't know what you're going into. So they brought a canoe and thought they were prepared. If everything was a river journey, they had it covered. But when you come to the base of a mountain and all you have is a canoe, how are you going to lead yourself out of that, right? So we're not realizing the outcomes we want. We're up against a mountain, and all we have is a canoe, and we're so frustrated because we need to scale this mountain and we don't have the proper equipment. And I think that's a great metaphor for healing. They didn't intend it as that. It's a leadership. It's about pivoting in leadership. But part of healing is leading yourself well. Yep. And so it's taking a moment at the base of the mountain, and all that this canoe represents, your what's happened to you, the events, your history, your lifestyle, your choices, your belief system, and taking an inventory, taking a backpack to scale a mountain and say, what do I need out of this canoe that's going to serve me for this obstacle, which is a mountain, and believing you can pivot. All I know is how to do rivers. Okay, and now I have a mountain. You can learn along the way. You might be scared. You're still going to scale the mountain. What tools do I need in my toolbox to scale the mountain? Because that's the next chapter.
Yeah. I love that. My second book was How I Unlearned My Crap. And I connected the dots between my current outcomes of what was dysfunctional in my life. And I was able to go back to root cause and show how that path wound. Can you do that process with what happened with forgiving your mother?
Yeah, yes, because it was pretty easy to see how the seeds of unforgiveness grew, why they took root. It wasn't hard to uncover that.
But how did that inability to forgive the narcissistic abuse, how did that create chaos and dysfunction in your life? And how was that corrected when you learned how to let it go?
Letting it go created, so I had to let go of what I was holding on to receive what the Lord had for me. It's kind of like gripping the canoe. If I made a lifestyle and a belief system out of unforgiveness, then when I let go of unforgiveness, what did I have? Kind of your identity gets wrapped up in the trauma.
Yeah.
And so letting go of unforgiveness, I had to choose who I was going to become. What am I going to identify myself with? And it's one thing to tell people, you're not what happened to you. You're not what you did. You can become a new person, right? It's one thing to say that in theory, and the answers are easy. The execution is complex. And so if you don't know who you are as an adult, especially, letting go of what you do know can be a very scary process. Like, it takes courage to transform. It's a courageous process to not just lay in the grave, wrap yourself in the grave clothes and say, the misery I know is more bearable than the fear of the unknown, because you don't want any more trauma and you don't know what's out there. So I'm just going to stay in the grave.
And that brings us full circle to what you said you had to unlearn, was that you learned the world was unsafe.
Yeah.
Letting go of that and stepping into the unknown. Did you discover a safe world?
Well, I would love to tell you it was linear, and yes, and now it's all sunshine and roses. What I had to do was make a paradigm shift. As you can tell, my life didn't turn out that way. I had to make a paradigm shift in my way of thinking and engaging and interacting with the world. Everything's not a personal attack. It's not like we live this side of heaven, and we can put on a lens of trauma that says everything's a personal attack. Nothing's happening to anybody else. No one's like us. We're so unique. We live in isolation. No one will understand. And those are lies, right? Those are lies we choose to believe. And so it's retraining, reprogramming the brain to see truth and to believe truth about ourselves. I've always been a truth teller in a family where lies prevailed. I've been a truth teller. And so that was a value of mine. But you know who I didn't use it on? I would still gaslight myself and tell myself, no one will understand. It's too much. It's all the things, right? That I know now on this side of my education, especially in experience, that is super common among those who have been through trauma. And we're all telling ourselves, no one will understand. We live in isolation. And we're all telling ourselves that. Let me disabuse you of that idea. It's a commonality among us.
Yes.
As overcomers, we have a lot in common. And believe it or not, we have a lot in common with humanity at large. We're not on the outside looking in. There's not a different rule book. Things happen to everybody. Did what happened to you happen to everybody? What happened to me happened to everybody? No, but the emotional honesty of it can draw us together. I remember when I was 19, one of the big lessons of this, if you have the time to indulge me in this, one of my big lessons of this was when I was 19 and I lived in a tag house between the Bloods and Crips for a summer. And technically we had to move out of the tag house to a church across the street that took us in because I didn't want to be at home. The whole reason I was there is I didn't want to be at home. And I felt I had outstayed my welcome at my friend's house all the summers before. And I'm a sorority girl from the campus on the hill. So finding me here is a complete just a dissonant way of seeing it. It was very incongruent. And I was with two guys who had this idea, and they needed a woman to help fulfill it because they wanted to do ministry in the inner city, and they wanted to provide food and supervision to children who didn't have it when school was out in the summer. And to be completely honest, I thought I had unshakable faith and very flexible practice when I was in college. And so most of the formal discipleship programs and internships, I was too messy and they didn't take me. But of course, these guys who have no oversight, no training, no, it's all unofficial. They're like, for sure you're in. And imagine a home life where living there was the better choice. But I did. And there was a 13-year-old girl who was in charge most of the time of her 5-year-old twin sisters because her mom was in a drug house. And she started spending the night with me. And I realized, why was I there? I was there because I did want all the good and altruism, but really I was there because I didn't want to spend the summer at home. Guess why she was there? Because she didn't want to be at her house. So on paper, we looked really different. But the emotional honesty of that moment was we were there for the same reason.
Yeah.
We're more alike than we are different.
Yes. And that is such a beautiful lesson when we're talking about the messiness of vulnerability and what we're going through. Because you're right. That there is a crap belief that says nobody will understand us. What we're going through is so different. It is so unique. Or we normalize it. And instead of taking a look and saying, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And when we share these conversations and we go vulnerable, all of a sudden we start to realize, I'm not that unique. Um, my trauma is overcomable. I do have something special to give, but
Yeah,
that does not exclude me
100%.
from everything. It actually includes me more.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Beautifully said.
So let's come back to radical kindness.
Yes.
I love that because the first time I heard you say that, my happy tail wag. That's
Yeah.
my expression. That when I hear something that has just pierced my heart, I call it my happy tail wagging. I want to know more, like a little puppy.
Yeah.
And when I first saw you say that, I thought about that movie, Paying It Forward.
Yeah.
How did radical kindness come about? How did you create this
Well,
movement?
I think radical kindness found me in several ways. And the idea was really born after my accident with a trapdoor and laying there in bed. Writing my story, it was the theme that emerged. So I just didn't realize that was the theme of my life until I wrote my story. And it wasn't the theme. And you think, well, that's funny because you have a story of abuse and trauma. And I'm like, yeah, I do. But the catalyst, the spark that lit the flame, I mentioned that Laura Casper was a mentor, became a mama, who became a grandmama. It was her radical kindness, and I wouldn't have called it that at the time. Looking back, there's no other phrase to describe it. Radical kindness walks in when everybody else walks out. Radical kindness defies the social norms in the times where it would be acceptable to walk away from the ugliness or the unlovableness of people and think, well, they deserve it. Well, look how they act, or look how they should change, right? So one time in particular, that was really where the spark that lit the flame, and I had known her for a few years at this time. I had my first accident. I was in a wheelchair. I had a 4-year-old at the time. I have four girls. The younger two were 4 and 3 at the time. The 4-year-old had undiagnosed celiacs, and she was in the hospital again in all this pain. We didn't know. And I have no idea why I didn't have an electric wheelchair. All I had was a manual, and they would ride on my lap. And I'm frustrated with so much of my life. And the more even though I'd gone through a lot of healing by then, the more frustrated I got, the more I relied on default and just isolation and walls and reverting. And I was at the Children's Hospital. My husband was a resident at the time, assigned to that hospital, but we still didn't see him any more than normal because of his workload. And so I really felt alone. It was a time where I really felt alone. And though I had people to reach out to, did I do that? Of course I didn't. And so Laura had been hammer calling me. She's 6 foot tall with a crown of gray glory, and her presence commands attention, but she's never loud. She passed in 2020. But in that moment, she was hammer calling me, and I wasn't answering. And she hammer called me again when I was out of my daughter's room and trying to take a breath. And I answered the phone, and I said, "Can't you take a hint? I want to talk to you." And she'd never done one thing in the world to deserve that kind of treatment. And that's the point where most people walk out. Okay, message received. Thank you very much. And in her sing-song voice, and that's what I was after. That's what I thought I wanted. That's what it's the only thing I knew to protect myself from those moments, because I didn't feel I could take one more thing. And she said, "No, I don't suppose I can. I'll be right there," and showed up and kept showing up. And then she had other women come clean my house, because my house wasn't ADA accessible. I was crawling through my house. So women from church came up and cleaned my house. I was on a meal train for almost 4 years of people bringing food and things. It was irrational, radical kindness, and it broke me. It broke me. There was a woman single mom with 2 high school daughters who had a Habitat for Humanity house built for her. And yet every Sunday, this woman was bringing Sundays with ice cream and stuff for my girls, with her girls, so that we could have that. And the following year, I got to be the one to take her to her cancer appointments. And she didn't get the miracle, and she passed, leaving 2 high school girls. But the joy she had her legacy, though she came out of trauma herself, was one of joy and radical kindness. And I thought, I need to have what these people had. It broke me. It let me rebuild. It undid all that crap because it was a different way and they wouldn't take my way for an answer. And that's what a lot of us need, is the people who will keep walking in when the rest of the world says, look, they don't want it. Just leave them alone, leave them be. Radical kindness is unreciprocated kindness. We give and are kind when there's nothing to receive in return.
Yeah. When I was in my late teens, I left home because things were very erratic and unsafe. And I don't like to say any of that things because it feels like it's blasphemy against my parents. They were amazing, wonderful people, but they were damaged souls. Yeah. And there was chaos. And anyway, this woman didn't know me, but she said, you can come live with me. She gave me a room. She gave me food. She gave me spending money. She gave me everything that I needed to get on my feet. And when I left her home, I said, how can I ever repay you? What you've done for me has been like the most amazing thing any human has ever done for me. And probably my entire life, nobody has ever come close to what she did. And she said to me, Kathy, you can never repay me. All you can do is when you see someone in need, is you be there for them. And I tried to live my life by that message. How did this woman breaking you open with her love and her kindness change the trajectory of who you are?
It changed everything. It literally changed everything, because I can't be the person I am today. I can't be the mom I am today. I couldn't have the faith I have today. I wouldn't have gone back to school the way I did it. She literally changed everything. Her radical kindness helped empower me and equip me to change a legacy that my children will never know. My children are the proof of a changed legacy. And that took a lot of hard work, and it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And we don't arrive. I tell my kids all the time, I have 4 girls, which is funny. I come from a family of abusive women and then had 4 girls. And then I'm involved, as you know, in a group of women's empowerment. And so it's just so ironic to me all the time, the life God set for me to live. And it was because of changing the legacy, rewriting the narrative, taking my voice and my power back. I tell my girls, you're going to be a better mom than me. I know it. Like, I believe that for you, and your kids, I hope and pray, will be a better mom than you. And that is a legacy that I'm proud to leave. Like, somebody did the hard work and they got some unhealed parts of me and some healed parts of me. And it's an evolution. But they are leaps and bounds better humans at this point, and healed humans at this point, than I even knew how to be at their age.
Yeah. All because a woman poured her love into you.
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do we take this in today's society? We are in a turmoil of radical change. Yes. All of our systems are breaking down. Yes. I see what is happening as the pendulum is coming to the farthest extreme, and that farthest extreme is divisive, and it is bringing all the darkness and all the ugly, but it has to happen. But in that moment, in all of that darkness, that is a perfect opportunity for each and every one of us to do this radical kindness, to pour love into another human being and bring the pendulum back.
Yes, it's actually an empowering movement. because we don't have to keep letting the people in power who are pushing divisiveness have the strongest voice. We don't have to yield to that. We are empowered to change the culture within us and around us. And that's why we say we're not a moment, we're a movement. We are trying to start a movement of radical kindness. That's why the tagline is mobilizing radical kindness. And we mean that because we do have a way that we believe that I'm teaching that we can mobilize radical kindness, because people are like, what do you mean you're mobilizing radical kindness? Well, I don't think we innately know how to do it. I think it sounds like a great idea, but people are like, how do we do it? Well, it comes with some self-healing, but it is still that part of transformation that is awareness, connection, and movement. And so we talked about the awareness. The connection is vertical and then inward and then outward. So inward part, I already talked about the vertical part, but the inward part then becomes building on that. Who was I created to be? Some of the work we've already talked about. But in addition to that, I would say the inventories, get to know yourself, personality inventory, spiritual giftedness, your skills, KSAOs, what do you know? What are you good at? And getting to know yourself and what you have to give in this world and healing some of the darkness. Then it's outward connection, right? So some of us in trauma, that's the big first step. That's where I told you there's some overlap, like a Venn diagram between the sections. And so as we go from connection to movement, that overlap is the outward connection. And if you see opportunities in my darkest moments, the catalyst that always helped me out was serving other people, always. And so if you can take note of opportunities outside your front door, that's the one step out of the grave, right? That's the first step, is connection, vertical inward, and then the outward connection that's taking you up out of the grave. And if you can connect with actual opportunities and you're in a space to do that officially, do it. But if you are like, I can't do that, I'm feeling a bit paralyzed and this is a lot for me, what's one step I can do to get out of the grave and connect outwardly? I tell people, go to your favorite coffee shop, look the barista in the eye, give them your real name, and then talk to the people around you. At least open your, even just saying hi, hello, excuse me, hold the door open for someone else in a way that connects. All of us are longing for connection. Do little things to connect with other people. And then that gains traction and momentum. And we start a movement because your eyes are going to be opened to the other ways of what's going on outside of your tunnel, outside of the grave you put yourself in.
Yeah.
And that creates mobility and movement. And we want to do that with radical kindness to ourselves and others.
Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. That is where our power is. And
Yes.
I love how you described a way I talk about it as universal laws, that we live in a law of polarity. So in our darkness, our gifts, our joy, our purpose is on the polar opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who are hungry, then you feed. For those who are starved for love, you put love out. All of these things, when we go to the opposite, instead of putting all of our focus in on the darkness, turn around and pour that radical kindness out into the world, and it will come radiating back to us.
100%.
Ah, love, 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 love this conversation.
Yes.
Melissa, before we go any further, there is a point that I think the audience really needs to hear.
Yeah.
And that is, when did you fall through the trapdoor?
May 20th, 2025.
6 months ago.
Not quite. 5.5.
5.5 months.
Barely 5, yeah.
And what has happened in these 5 months when you were at your lowest low, in the darkest moment, where I can only imagine all of us who have been in these dark places and we think, can't do it. I'm tired. I don't want to go on anymore. And look at how radically your life has changed.
Very radically. It's not just radical kindness, it was a radical change. And like I said, I had gone through my soul healing a long time ago. laying flat on my back again with all the things that I'd gone through that put me flat on my back in my life. I just didn't know in those moments, you can go on because like there's this quib that people say, well, you have 100% track record of making it through all your hard days. And they mean well when they say it. And I receive it that way from them. So if you've ever said it to me, don't feel bad. But inside what I'm thinking is, I don't know if I want to.
Yeah.
And I'm just being real. I have unshakable faith. I have, that doesn't take anything away from any of that. I just have had days more than once in my life where I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to. And I have a lot of reasons to stay. I have 4 daughters and 2 dogs and a wonderful husband. And so I have a lot of reasons to stay. It doesn't make it any less hard in those moments.
Yeah.
And so making that choice, I think, what can I do with my time, especially since I could barely even sit up. Like it took 2 weeks to even get to a slight incline. I could only be in a recliner or on a PT table or my bed. And I'd been in a wheelchair for 4 years on and off before, so I've been through it before, and I had COVID for months, and I've been in this situation, and I didn't want to fall into a dark place again. And so when I heard the whispers of writing the book again, it gave me an outlet. But the thing was, I had said I'd heard it in 2009. I heard it in 2017. Doing it this time, that one step of obedience. I talk a lot about one steps, wherever you are, one step. And my one step looks different than my one step in this point in my life looks different than my one step at all the other points in my life. So we never compare one steps. But wherever you are in your journey, that one step. And for me, it was just stopping the voice that kept saying to write my story. And I wrote my story. And that one act of obedience and vulnerability opened doors that I didn't even know to knock on. I found a community of authors and speakers. I found opportunities to tell my story that I didn't even know if anyone was going to be interested in my story. And then it gained traction as I started talking about this pattern of radical kindness. And so in 5 months, I wrote the arc of my story. I have launched a nonprofit to mobilize radical kindness and started speaking on stages that I didn't even know if my name would ever be mentioned in those rooms. And I'm among women who are amplifying their voices. So I found a safe space to share my story among other women who are sharing their story, and finding that everything I believe and hold dear of rising together, of doing life together, was on the other side of that one step that I had been putting off for 16 years.
Yeah. And in that darkest moment, just hanging on for that one step can totally turn that little 1 degree pivot that eventually takes us to the 180.
Yeah. And it did it quickly too, right? I'm doing things in 5 months that I, before this moment, would have thought would take years.
Yeah. That's the supposed-tos, the preconceived notions of the conditioned responses, of the crap that we were taught. Yeah. It can happen so quickly.
One step in the right direction can change a lot.
Yeah. And accepting the kindness to give ourselves to say, yeah, I don't know if I want to.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the strength, but I'm just going to keep breathing. I'm just going to keep doing it. Whether I have it or not, whether I feel I have it, it comes.
One more day. One more day. One of the things that my husband and I say to each other is one more day. So in the really hard days, you can always make a different choice, right? We can always make a different choice. But how about we do one more day? And we do. And here we are several days later, right? So one more day.
One more day.
When it's a very dark moment, sometimes all you can do is say one more day. And then on top of that, I always make myself find something to be grateful for. It could be that I have a roof over my head today. You don't know what tomorrow brings. We all know that. If you have experience with trauma, That's the fear, right? We catastrophize everything. So being present involves, what am I thankful for right now? And bringing me back to the present, because that's where reality is. I don't have to ruminate about what happened. I don't have to catastrophize the future. I can give myself permission to be present in this moment. And gratitude can center us there.
And acceptance that sometimes it sucks and sometimes it's hard, but that's okay too.
Well, it's normal. We're not the anomaly. We're not abnormal. We're not alone. People say, well, you're not alone, and it feels very lonely. And what I want to emphasize with that statement is that we can believe the trauma lie, that nobody gets it, nobody understands, nobody else feels this way. And I just want to say there are people who do, and hang on one more day. Hang on one more day. Take one step. One step.
Yes,
This
Melissa.
has been an amazing space. Thank you for it.
Oh, thank you for being here. And I know that there's a lot of people listening who are going to want more of you, because we just scratched the surface. And I know you mentioned you've got a book coming and you've got this radical kindness. How can they find you, and how can they reach you, work with you, and be a part of this movement?
Yeah, I would love to hear from you. So yeah, my book comes out in February 22nd. And then after that, That's Whom He Raised. And then there's another one that will come out after that called Radical Kindness, with a workbook. In the meantime, go to www.thesagehillproject.com and hit the contact us. And in that message, that will come straight to me. You can fill out that message. We do workshops, we do individual coaching, organizational coaching. Tell us what you're looking for, or what info you have, or just tell me how you're impacted. I would love to hear from you.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I know you've impacted me in this conversation. You've lit me up, and I thank you for your time and your vulnerability and your expertise and the light that you bring to this world. And I am even more grateful for that woman who poured all that love into you so that you could be pouring it so much out into the world. Thank you, Melissa, for being here.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate you.
And for those of you who are watching and listening, I want you to remember to challenge everything so that you can achieve anything, because your soul is calling you to level up, and everything you say and do matters. I'm Kathy Baldwin, and this has been another episode of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up Your Soul's Calling. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for listening to the Unlearn the Crap and Level Up podcast. If this conversation spoke to you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and leave a review. That simple act helps amplify this important work of unlearning the crap that holds us back. This show is built on the foundation of my 3 books: Unlearn the Crap and Level Up Your Soul is Calling, a roadmap to release what no longer serves you; How I Unlearned My Crap, which is my raw story of breaking free and the patterns that I needed to unlearn; and the 3rd book, The Unlearned Life, an AI-powered ritual system for truth transformation and personal empower. If you're a podcaster, or you want to be, this is for you, because 85% of podcasts fail, not because of the message isn't powerful enough, but because the back end can be overwhelming. I created the Finally Podcast automation system so your voice doesn't become a statistic. Your message is too important to be silenced by burnout, tech chaos, or even wasted time. My mission is to support not only my guests and you, the audience, but also every podcaster who's ready to level up. So until next time, keep unlearning, keep leveling up,